รับรองว่าจะเป็นช่วงที่น่าสนใจแล้วก็เชื่อว่าจะเป็นประโยชน์สำหรับการทำงานของทุกท่านนะคะแล้วก็หน่วยงานของท่านด้วยค่ะนะคะสำหรับช่วงนี้ไปดิฉันขอเชิญทุกท่านพบกับการอภิปรายในหัวข้อที่ชื่อว่าแนวทางส่งเสริมการอ่านเพื่อสร้างสังคมที่เท่าเทียมแล้วก็ต้องขอเรียนเชิญวิทยากรทั้ง4ท่านนะคะมีคุณนิลาทันซิลค่ะผู้ก่อตั้งโครงการอุทยานการอ่านสายรุ้งจากประเทศอินโดนีเซียค่ะคุณยีเทศอูนะคะผู้ก่อตั้งและผู้อำนวยการห้องสมุดทาราภาและศูนย์การเรียนรู้อมราประเทศเมียนมาคุณเหยียนไฮฮาค่ะผู้อำนวยการห้องสมุดแห่งโรงเรียนสาธารณสุขฮานอยดร.ทีจินกรานผู้ประสานงานด้านสิทธิการศึกษาภายใต้คณะกรรมการแห่งชาติด้านการพิทักษ์สิทธิเด็กประเทศอินเดียค่ะและผู้ดำเนินรายการอภิปรายในช่วงนี้นะคะดำเนินรายการโดยคุณสุพจน์กลิ่นสุวรรณค่ะพิธีกรผู้ประกาศข่าวภาคภาษาอังกฤษของสถานีโทรทัศน์ไทยทีวี4ช่อง3พิธีกรและผู้ช่วยบรรณาธิการข่าวภาษาอังกฤษของสถานีโทรทัศน์ไทย PBS ค่ะขอเสียงปรบมือต้อนรับวิทยากรทั้ง4และผู้ดำเนินการอภิปรายด้วยค่ะ
Ladies and gentlemen, the clock in front of me says 75.00, so that means that's pretty much the number of minutes we have for 4 people to be speaking on a very delicate yet important issue for the each individual country and perhaps the region, if not for humanity. So I'm gonna keep this really quick from my part and make sure the speakers have more than enough time to share their experience with us. All right, so first up, the question which I would like to start with for all 4 speakers would be pretty much how you would define reading for equity. All right, I mean it's a very short and concise question, but it may expand to a journal for some of you. And what do you have in mind when you're talking about equality and reading? We're talking demographic and psychographic aspects. So maybe let's start with Dr. D, please.
Good afternoon. So I think in all our countries, in all developing countries, equality is a big issue. And the country I come from, India, there's a huge disparity in educational outcomes. India produces probably the world's best IT experts and doctors and engineers, but we also have children in our schools who cannot read even till grade 5 or 6 in elementary school. So there's a huge disparity between children and their education. And equality is really an aspirational goal. We all try to ensure that there are equal outcomes. And for that, it's very important, and my focus as yesterday was on what elementary education, elementary schools can do. Basically, we have to try to see that no child is left behind. Learning should be for all children. For example, in a classroom, if there are children who are not able to read, they are struggling readers, for whatever reason, the teacher should be able to give them more attention, give them more time, give them more opportunity to read in classroom. In remote areas, which has been mentioned many times, the government or NGOs should provide more books because those areas are below the national average, below the particular province. Students who have a different home language or a different dialect need more support to be able to read well in the standard language. So these are examples of how we've got to support those children who are falling behind in an equitable manner in the classroom as far as reading is concerned. And I will not address this now, but English is a big issue in my country, and there's a big divide between people who speak English and those who don't speak English. And that is a very important divide that we must address. It's a big equity issue.
Right. Okay. So, as we all know, that India is the ideal democratic country because of the difference of the people within the same country in many aspects, right? So that's a very interesting point as well. Okay. So, Nila, what do you have to say about this issue? ขอไมค์เบอร์ 3ด้วยนะครับ โอเค yeah yeah
Okay, for me, reading for equity means that every child, no matter they are rich or poor, black or white, boys or girls, have the same opportunity and is given the same chance to dream and be successful from the cradle to college. And reading and knowledge both are a dangerous thing because it teaches people that there are other worlds out there, and it shows them that they're not alone and they're not limited by their gender, race, or anything. Yeah.
Right. So this danger is that in any way a threat to anybody? Is there
No,
like a negative part?
danger
to
in
reading?
a good thing, I
Oh,
mean.
alright.
Yeah, because it opens up their mind. And then I think reading is a great equalizer because the ability to read levels the cultural playing field and goes beyond any race, gender, and etc. And the reason women are not allowed to read in some parts of the world is that because their ability to read, comprehend, and expand their knowledge and minds will make them equal and then eventually surpass men.
Right.
Right? Which I think it shouldn't be that way. And also, like for kids,
Even though you come from a Muslim country.
huh?
Even though you come from a Muslim country.
Indonesia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for me, I think children are like sponges. You give them the ability to read. You have it. It's the same like you have opened the lid of a box of opportunities and possibilities. Keeping any child from reading, it's the same thing as you keep them in the box and not able to see the world. Yeah.
Now, in Indonesia's case, you guys comprise of lots of different islands, small islands as well. Does that make life more difficult for people like you to expand the love, of books and the resources?
Yeah, of course, because these remote areas, they have very limited infrastructure. So just to go there is already a challenge in itself. And like our government doesn't really go to small areas like that. So that's why I decided to provide access to good books to kids. And we shouldn't give up because of the hard, or all the challenges in infrastructure. We have to start from somewhere.
Okay. Thank you. And now, Ms. Haiha, on this issue?
From my point of view, as a librarian, I just think very simple. The definition of reading for equity means that everyone can have the same opportunity to read the book, to access to the information in different form. In Vietnam, I'm very happy to see that even the children living on the streets, they can read book. They sometimes you can see that a little kid sitting on the pavement of the street with a very poor clothes, but he still hold the newspaper on the hand. And old man look very tired after a long day of riding the cyclo to earn for money. But they lie down on the cyclo and read the newspaper. I think that I'm very happy as a librarian. I'm very happy to see that because if they have the equal chance to access to the information, they will have much more chance to improve their life. Yeah.
I see. So in their case, when you're saying kids on the streets, they're reading, are they reading because they acknowledge that they must read to develop themselves, or are they reading for just pure entertainment for the day's work?
We try to inspire their love for reading because in Vietnam, for example, in the General Science Library of Vietnam, in the south of Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, we have a project that every week we invite a volunteer, maybe a medical doctor, maybe from job union, thing like that. We invite a person to come to the library and we open a room and we invite a lot of children living on street to come there. And the volunteer will talk with them about the skills that they need to protect themselves, about how to change their life, things like that, to inspire them. So I think that with the little kid, we should start from the very teeny thing. Maybe this time they read a book for entertainment, but next time they feel that okay, it is useful for us, so they will need it. They will read it again, or they will read another one to improve their life.
I see. Okay, thank you. And now moving on to Myanmar's perspective, Mr. Yetet U. Yeah, life would be much easier. Yes, let's do that. ขอบคุณมากครับ Okay, so Mr. Yetet U. So reading for equity. What's that?
Yes, for sure. Everybody must have access or must have right. They have right to access to every knowledge, and it must not limit because of their gender, because of their nationality or any religion they believe. And I also believe that everybody must read, and also you have to inspire them whenever they want to read. And government, also the private sector, should promote and should help to make the challenges become lesser and lesser day by day. That's my perspective.
Right. Now that you mentioned that, maybe you'd like to share with us maybe the the responsibilities shared. Maybe asking all four of you. Let's say out of 100, how much should the government? How much should be the government's responsibility, whereas how much should be from the private sector, NGOs, or private companies?
Well, government, I will say, if you say percents, mostly about 60%, I will say, because for the government, as a whole country, they have resources to assets, and also they have financial supporting for sure to assets, and it is the responsible government to promote the well-being of the citizens. So I'll say 60%. Other 40% is for the private sector. I'll say around 30% because government cannot cover alone, and government has to manage all the stuff. And sometimes it is not possible that who is doing wrong deeds and the right deeds. So the private sector have to make the right judgment and suggest to the government as well to make sure that they are doing the wrong or the right thing. And for the remaining percent, it depend on the citizens like yourself or myself to make sure that we get the right assets. And if we are not right, we must have courage to suggest to the government or the private sector who was working to make sure that you get the right information. Because as I always mention, you have books, we have libraries. And if we have books that we never want to read, what is the use of books in the library? So.
Good point. You mentioned that the people would also say tell the government if they're walking towards the right path and all this. And from the other hand, does the government really listen?
Well, in my perspective, in my country, under a certain time, a lot of people generally assume, and I also assume that it is hard to talk to the government, and it is true for certain hours, but it depends on the person, I will say.
Okay.
You just have to know you have the right to announce what you have been thinking in the positive criticisms that I will say.
Okay, thank you. Going to Vietnam's case, Ms. Hai Ha, we talked earlier before popping up on stage. You mentioned that the budget for each local community pretty much depends on the local government itself and not from the federal government or from the central government. Would you like to?
Before that, the basis for the activity of a location, it depends on the local authority. We get the approval from the government, but then it depends on the local authority. So we are talking about the role of the library here. I think that now the library and also the librarians should change the idea. We need to be more proactive. We need to PR. We need to talk to advertise more about our activity. So we can advocacy for more policy and better policy, even from the ministry level. So we can get more fund from the government to the local authority, and then we need to advocacy also for the local authority to understand more about the role of the library, as well as the role of promoting reading activities in our community, so that they can understand the better they understand about the activity of the library. So I think that the better of the budget they can spend for the library.
Right. Is the private sector doing a lot in Vietnam to support reading?
Yeah. You mean the NGO?
Yeah.
Yeah. In Vietnam, we got a lot of support from NGO. If we want to add, I showed to people here yesterday. In Vietnam, we have a project we call the mobile library, and the government pay a lot of attention to the activity of mobile library. But now, in 63 provinces of Vietnam, every 63 province they have the mobile library, but only three province had the specialized car for the mobile library. That specialized car. I mean that in that car we have a separate reading room for the kids. We have a room that we can put the computer connect to internet, and even in that specialized car we have a reading room for the blind people, so that the blind people, the people who cannot see, can come to read book there or use a talking book there. Yeah. So besides that, for example, with the project from Room to Read with Dr. Ni, with that project we got a lot of support from them. And now in the north of Vietnam, in the mountainous area of Vietnam, it came to the mountainous area of Vietnam, and it spent about, I think that 30 million Vietnam dongs for each school to build a small library there, to build a small with the chair, with the desk, and with the book, so that the little kid can come there to read, mostly in the primary school.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even with the Asia Foundation, we got a lot of books from the Asia Foundation, more than 160 library in Vietnam got the book donated from the Asia Foundation, equivalent to about $15 million.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not in the Vietnamese language in these books. They're in English.
Of course, in English.
In English.
Yeah, but without that support, we cannot afford to buy the English book, because English books are very, very expensive in Vietnam.
Okay.
So without that support, we cannot have that.
Okay, and we're going to talk about this issue as well in the English language. Okay, so now Neela and Dr. D, yes, you'd like to add anything? Please.
I just want to get back to this reading for equity for a minute. Many of us mentioned equal opportunity. Equal opportunity is not enough because those populations who are disadvantaged for various reasons, either because of a language issue, because of the remoteness, apart from an equal opportunity, they need more support initially, greater attention, which we also call affirmative action. So we have to do more for them than we do for the rest of the population, and then it is equitable. Doing more for those who deserve more, who are more disadvantaged. So often when we are working with people who are, or children who are disadvantaged, we have to do special for them and not just equal for them. For them to become equal, we have to do more for them. So we must remember, equity is not just equal opportunity, but doing something extra and special for them.
All right, so at the end of the day, the curve is pretty much at the straight line.
Yes, I totally agree with Dr. G, and I hope our government also think that way. Yeah, we also have mobile libraries like the ones in Vietnam, but it was initiated by the wife of our president. So she set up mobile libraries in some areas, but unfortunately, most of the areas that she provided with the mobile library are on Java Island, where Jakarta is located.
Right.
They don't go to remote islands or remote villages, which I think these are the areas where much needed help in terms of access to books. So yeah, I think we should put more attention to these types of areas.
Right.
Yeah, in Vietnam we have a special policy from the government that for old people or handicapped people who need the material who need any material from the library, so the library have to send to them free of charge. Yeah, free of charge.
Free,
and also with the blind people, when we run the mobile library, we came to the school for blind children, and we came to the blind union, blind association to serve them, because with the blind people, and most of them are very poor, it is very hard for them to travel for the long way to reach the library, so the library have to change, the library come to reach them. But the reason why I talk about it here, because now from 2012 the budget for the library, it depends on the local authority. So before that, every year we have 20 billion Vietnam dongs to support for the mobile library. But from 2012, it depends on the local authority. And if we cannot have a good strategy to advocate the local authority, we will have no more money to support to the activity. So it is very hard for us to provide activity to come to rural area to reach the handicapped people or visually impaired people or poor people like this.
Right. So from your perspective, you're saying that it should be something sent directly from the federal government to everyone.
Yeah.
Not not what you call it, decentralizing.
Not only.
Not only. Oh, okay. Okay. Now there's a special question regarding limitations, as well as you were saying. Regardless of where you're located, your gender or your social status whatsoever. This question goes straight to Mr. Ye Tet U, right? Okay, it's written in Thai, so let me translate this. Okay, in Thailand, libraries do not tend to limit people's access, right? Regardless of your gender, your age, your social status whatsoever. Are there any limitations in Myanmar? Maybe this is based on the fact that you guys were, sorry to say, but frozen for quite some time. Now during the defrost stage, frozen, right?
Well,
are there still any limitations? And if there are, how do you deal with that?
Well, technically talking, we don't have any limitation, depend on gender or education or the religion, because we have been treated equally under the eye of political perspective. So basically, if you want to be a member, we need to make sure that you have documents like national ID, the recommendation from the police that you are a good guy to borrow books and a member. So it is equal for everybody. You don't need to be a Christian or a Buddhist. You just need to be under all those conditions.
Right.
And if you ask me if there is any situation like this, I'll say yes. But right now the government had some really, I will call it the frozen stage. So if you don't have a document, they will say you can give me later. So I'll say we don't have limitations. You can be a member no matter what, but still you still have to provide documents. But you still can give later, means we will change.
Right.
So for now, we don't have limitation technically, and it will change.
Okay. Now there's a conspiracy theory, or some governments in this region have been accused that it's easier to control the people if they are not educated. It's easier to control the mass if they don't know. It's easier for them just it's easier to control them. So are there, from your points of view, for your governments, all four countries, does that exist in your country? people want people not to know, not to have knowledge, not to have access to education so that it's easier to control these people?
Well, I actually do not agree with that statement. If you don't have education, it is not easier to control. I will point out one thing. As everybody might heard, the problem with Myanmar Burmese people, the Buddhists, and the Muslim people in our state, it becomes worse and worse. And just yesterday, we have that religion riots in Meitila, in the center of Myanmar, between Buddhists and Muslim again. It is because of lack of knowledge and education. Buddhists have a problem, and also at that area, Muslim has have a problem with the knowledge and education. So education doesn't make you easier to lack of education doesn't make you easier because you believe in something very easily without thinking critically. So education, it's hard to oppress but easy to control. So if you have education, it is easy to control, but you can't suppress anybody or oppress something.
All right.
So I'll say with education, people are easy to follow because they have critical thinking and they won't hurt their life. But without education, if something got wrong, it got worse.
All right. Hi, huh?
That point of view happened in Vietnam for a long time ago under the time that French colony are still in Vietnam. At that moment only less than 5% of Vietnamese can read and write. But now I think that the percentage of people who can read and write is 95%. And all of it defined as one of the target objective of Vietnam, that all of the children can read and write fluently before they enter the age of 10. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So how about Indonesia's case? Is the government sincere in terms of spreading the love for education and books to everyone?
We were colonialized by Dutch for 350 years, and back then people were not allowed to go to school, especially women, and only those who are in the upper classes could go to school. Why? Because at that time the Dutch colonial didn't want us to be smart and didn't want us to be independent, but finally we got our independence. And then I remember in the US it used to be illegal to teach slaves to read and write because the lawmakers knew that the ability to imbibe information and communicate would make the slaves smarter, and then it would stimulate revolution. So I agree with your statement that reading would
Make it harder to control.
Yes.
Oh, okay. But that was back ages ago.
That was back
Okay.
ages ago. But now in Indonesia, our government encouraged people to go to school. Yeah.
Dr. D, you in India as well?
Yeah, actually difficult question for me to answer. I've been in the government for about 22 years.
Oh, okay.
So,
Insider.
but still, I'll say that I think now there is, most governments are trying to ensure that education becomes universal and most children have access to education. But the type of education that is there in my country at least, and some other countries that I've seen, is fairly limited. It doesn't encourage a child to think, imagine, create. It's very conformist. It's about information to be learnt and memorized and reproduced in examinations. Now that is not education. I think you were also hinting at that. That's not education that will ignite children's minds and question things.
Right.
So the current education system that we have is very limiting in that sense. But I think most governments today are committed to ensuring that at least basic education of 8, 9, 10 years is almost universalized.
I see. Now, speaking of basic education and the modernity as well, Thailand has a policy to provide children, especially first graders, with tablet PCs. Right now, India, and the last for the crowd, tablet PCs. Yeah, computer tablets, right? So India, as like a Silicon Valley of Asia, if I could say, do you guys have this policy as well in promoting younger children to read books through tablets? And the second follow-up question is, which would you prefer for the younger generations to grow with, reading from a printed version or from a tablet? And what are the pros and cons?
So we also started a scheme called One Laptop Per Child, which never took off because it was too expensive, too many numbers in India, so it didn't take off. But coming to the, especially because I've worked in the area of language learning and reading, I personally feel that language learning requires a lot of interaction, especially when a child is young, coming to school. It's not enough to just put a book in the child's hand. A child requires a lot of interaction, oral interaction, questions, discussion, analysis, for which an adult is required. Adult interaction is very important. You may have heard of Vygotsky. I mean, the basic point, he's a psychologist, he was a psychologist. Basically, they say that all learning is social. Initial learning especially is social. It's based on interaction between children, but more importantly between a children and someone who is more experienced. And especially for language. Language is about using language, rich use, questions, and trying to understand deeper meaning, as I was saying yesterday. So a lot of storytelling, questions being asked, interpretations, opinions. So that requires a lot of work in the classroom and not just a printed book or a tablet. So I'm saying, before I come to this, it's very important to have
human reaction.
Human reaction, especially, yes. Yeah. Whether it's shared reading, paired reading, loud reading, all of this requires someone else who can talk to the child, correct the child, give feedback, discuss and interact. So if a child reaches a stage of becoming, as I said yesterday, an independent reader, someone who can read on her own without any guidance, then a lot of silent reading can happen based on a printed book or a tablet.
Right.
But actually reading and learning language requires a lot of interaction. And this concept of social learning basically says that any teaching, any kind of learning requires 3 stages. And that's called scaffolding. Scaffolding means support. First they say, I do, the teacher does, or models, explains how you read a text well or explain it well. The second is, we do. Teacher works with children in a guided kind of system, works with children. And then the third stage is, you do, getting children to read on their own or do something on their own. So we must remember that any learning follows these 3 stages, modeling by the teacher, I do, we do together with the children, and then you do on your own. When the child is in the you do stage, yes, they can do silent reading on their own. A tablet could also be okay, but a tablet is not a substitute for a lot of interaction with teachers around rich use of language. And in the early stages, there is no answer but to interact with children around language and not just depend on a machine.
All right, so you can't avoid, we need to have human connectivity with these children. Oh, now, just regarding this question that somebody just sent up on stage, just to compare books and tablets. Once we have the human interaction, once we've guided them through, which would you see is more suitable for the younger generation? The pros and cons of both, maybe.
Yeah, I suppose I don't think that stage ever ends, in the sense that interaction is always required. We just can't say, here is a tablet or here is a book, do self-learning. That interaction is crucial. But I do feel that the printed word has a lot of importance in the sense that somehow it's easier to engage with the printed word in a book. And the second issue I feel is that we create another divide, which is a digital divide. I mean, Thailand, there's a commitment, or it's already happening, that every child gets a tablet. Every child who's in school.
First graders.
First graders. And they have a lot of reading material already there in that book?
I think there are quite a few subjects. I'm unsure of
it's
the
more,
details.
So the risk is this, that if you make it very subject oriented, then reading for pleasure it becomes a problem, because as we've been discussing since yesterday, it's very important to allow and encourage children to read for pleasure, and that improves reading skills. Very often, if we provide a tablet with some particular software, it's very oriented to the curriculum or to what's being taught in school, and reading for pleasure, which can come from a variety of printed materials, may get neglected. So that's one. And second, in our country, in my country at least, I don't think everyone can get tablets or laptops, and it's important not to create further divide and ensure that cheaper materials like books are available.
I see. Okay. Now, before I move on to my next question, the other three speakers, anybody would like to comment, add anything regarding tablet PCs or technology used in spreading the access to reading libraries? Anybody?
I agree that technology helps increase education and knowledge. However, in reality, it is hard to do it in Indonesia, knowing that we have 17,000 islands. A lot of the areas are in eastern Indonesia still don't have electricity. So how can you recharge the battery of the tablets? And then even though the government would like to give every tablet for each kid like in Thailand, but our government doesn't have one. They don't have that yet. I still think that a cheaper way, like Dr. G said, that through books, as long as we can provide access to books to these remote areas, then it's already a great step, I think.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, just sending books and tablets, if they have electricity to them, it's hard enough. Just based on the fact that you guys are pretty much spread out throughout the ocean. How about if Dr. T mentioned that professionals or the adults to help these kids through these books? Do you guys have any? Is that sufficient in your country? Do you have enough staff to guide the librarians or teachers to help students?
No, no. We have a problem that we lack of teachers. Yeah, that's one of the problems that Indonesia is facing. Numbers of teachers are not enough. So some schools, they only have one teacher in remote areas. Can you believe it?
And teach every subject.
Yeah, yeah. Only
Vietnam,
one.
Myanmar as
Yeah,
well? Yeah.
yeah.
In
And
Thailand.
then then some schools, like when the teacher is sick, nobody can teach.
No
Yeah.
substitutes.
No substitutes. So that's a
All right.
problem. I don't know whether it's the same. Yeah.
Right. So.
This is the same in Vietnam, because in some rural area of Vietnam, they have a very small and very poor classroom where there's only one teacher and about 14 or 15 students in that class, but they are in different grades. So they show it on TV. When the teacher first give the exercise for one little kid and then turn back to a bigger kid and give them introduce them or teach them on mathematics or things like that, and then back with another grade, and yeah, only 14 or 15 student pupil, but and one teacher at different grade, but it is hard for the teacher. It is also hard for the teacher to ensure that all the pupils go to class every day, because normally it is very hard for them. They have to walk on the barefoot without any shoe and sandal. They have to walk for, I think that more than about 2 hours to go to school in the mountains, and then there's no light in the school. They have no uniform, of course. Even in the winter, the weather is very cold. They do not have enough clothes. So in Vietnam, we have a program we call it that bring the rice with meat. Bring the rice, the cooked rice with meat, the bread or the rice with meat to people there. And when the youth union and the young people go to the school like this, they bring some food from
Oh, okay.
some food and some also the money to help them to sustain. They bring some food from the
Village?
Yeah, from the village people there, and bring also some book for them to read later. Yeah.
I see.
Hard for us to talk about tablet.
Okay.
Well, I have a bit different thoughts, and it's not a joke. My country has a vision. Everybody must have a tablet, and I wish it is not possible because. Let me ask you one question then. We as all panelists, and I'm sure the room, the listeners, all the spectators also have internet access to their phones and iPad. How many people read from their iPad? How many people read from their phones? I'll bet right now I see some people using phones is Facebook or Twitter.
Yeah.
So more technology, less reading. And speaking of Facebook, how many people read more than 10 sentences in your Facebook status? Do you even read notes from the channel? You read very short sentence. You know why Twitter is famous? Because it is short and get to the point.
Right.
So this advantages and disadvantages. That's what I'm trying to point
I
out.
see.
If you have tablet in a student, give to 10 students, don't think about electricity. How many people will do their homework with tablet or play games or Facebook? That's the thing we have to think about.
I see. So regardless of the materials, the technology, the advancement, it's all back to the mentality of the people if they want to have access to the books as well. Even though, as Dr. D mentioned, that we have to give more to those who lack access. Now, it comes to an important question of how do we persuade the younger generation in particular, those who do not have access. All right, here's the library. How do we lure them into the library? Let me share you experience back in my high school. Lots of people, lots of kids go to this library, enter our library because it's cool. Outside is hot. We just go there to stay in the air conditioner. So from this, how do we make sure that the younger generation enter our libraries and make best use of the materials in there? This one goes for all of you then.
Well, I'll go first.
Yeah.
And it's one good thing that you have a place to come and hang out because the place outside it's hot. In Myanmar we don't have it. It's still hot. But when I was in library tour in San Francisco, I saw a lot of people in the library because it is too cold outside and library is warm.
Oh, it's the other way around now. Okay.
So this is one group, and the second group, it's most of them are homeless, so they have free water, and toilet as well, and internet. So this is the second thing, and the third thing is some people come to the library because they have a service called job search for them. So and also another thing is students come to the library because they have volunteer tutor who do homework together for free with them. So we need to think about that. Are we really giving the service they needed? Yes, of course, people come to the library because it is too hot outside. It's one of the service. You can hang out, you can sleep there, and then maybe we need to think what those people need because they come here and sleep only. Maybe let's say it is a teenager. We need to think about what kind of teenagers. They finish high schools. If they finish high school, maybe we want to talk about what kind of education they have to continue. Or if they are people who doesn't have much work to do, maybe we have to talk to the job agency. I believe Thailand have a lot. And then maybe a room for them to post about jobs. So this is other services we need to provide because Thailand is very lucky. You have people in the room already. No matter what purpose is, you need to give them some extra service. This is useful for them. That's what I suggest.
Okay, so Mr. Yetahu is saying it's okay for people to enter the library and not to read books, but it's up to us and those in power and those with the will to persuade them into reading.
True. That's what I suggest because in Myanmar we have hard time to make people come into the library and sleep there.
Okay. How about you, Ms. Haiha? How do you persuade people to come into your libraries?
Yeah, at a librarian, one of the very hot topic that we at a librarian discuss together with together for a long time is how to make the library become a very friendly environment that people want to come. How to attract more people come to the library. Firstly, maybe they come to the library because it is a cool place that they can avoid the hot weather outside. But they come to the library because they want to avoid the hot weather outside, and then they find a book interesting and they read book. It's okay with us. So the library now should be the library and the librarian now should be more to be creative and sometimes proactive in finding the different way to attract more and more users to come to the library. Firstly, maybe they come to library for entertainment, but then they will find something interesting in the library and we can encourage their reading. But with the school library, we need the cooperation from the teacher.
Right.
In Vietnam, when the teacher give the exercise for the student, mostly they require the student to copy exactly, not really like that, but to repeat exactly what they said in the class or what people said in the book. So I think that the teacher should change the way that they provide, that they teach the student, so that the student have to go to the library to look for information. It will be much better. So we need to cooperate between the teacher and the library, so that the collection in the book in the library will be best suitable with the teaching subject in the class or teaching question in the class, so that we can encourage more and more students come to the user come to the library. And beside that, we can have things like a book contest.
Book contest.
Yeah, or some other activity. Or we can have a book fair or book show, things like that, to introduce more people to come to the library. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Neela, how about you? How do you promote people to come to your libraries?
Okay, I think library should be a fun place to read, and we need to put more visuals on the walls. We have like so-called majalah dinding, which is wall magazines. It's magazines, but it's printed very big on the wall, colorful, and then lots of pictures, illustrations, and short articles about, just short articles about stories. And also like kids can write, and then the best article will be printed there. So for kids, it boosts up their self-confidence to see her or his story printed on the wall, and then all his friends can read, right? And then also I have an idea that we could, this will be implemented in my Rainbow Reading Gardens, we could create a so-called Captain Reading.
Captain Reading.
Yes. So, for example, one kid who has read 20 books, he will get a pin, right? With an icon like a captain with books or something, and then like he can put it in his school uniform. So whenever he goes to school, like their friends will see.
There's a nerd coming.
Yeah, what is that? Oh, I'm a captain reading, and then like their friends would love to have that, because kids are all about new
Showing off.
Yeah, showing off like new cool thing on the uniform. So this is one of the ways to encourage children to read.
So create a trend among them, or a
trend.
little competition. Okay, Dr. D, how do you guys do this in India? How do you promote people to come to libraries and use it?
I agree with most of the points that have come till here, but I'd just like to stress what I said yesterday. It's difficult to inculcate a love for reading once a child is a teenager. It's important to start as early as possible, and it's very important to have books available inside the classroom. My focus is on the school just now. So from pre-primary, preschool stage, to have books inside the classrooms that are used as a part of the teaching process, as well as just providing some dedicated time for reading. When books are given to children, they're allowed to read on their own or in pairs, but ensure that time is meant basically for reading and not for, as I showed yesterday, just repeating or memorizing. And the role of the teacher is very important. The teacher should also be seen to be reading, because young children see teachers as role models. So do teachers actually read? Do teachers read in that reading time, or can they relate stories? That's also very crucial. And apart from it, of course, all this about reading events and wallpapers and activities inside the library, that's crucial.
Right. Now, in terms of the what do you call it? The acknowledgement of these people, so that they know that reading can really help them develop themselves. Reading can really reduce the gap between them and those of the upper class, those who are richer. Now, if you drink something now, your thirst is quenched right away. If you plant a seed, it takes a few weeks and the tree comes up. But for reading, sometimes it takes years and years to see a difference. And I'm not sure if the younger generation are willing to wait that long, or how do we encourage them to know that difference will be seen in their lives if they read? Is this question too hard? Right? It's pretty hard to see the concrete achievement ที่เป็นความสำเร็จที่เป็นรูปธรรมของ
So for a young child, the most important, the sense of achievement, sense of joy is when a child can actually read a book, a simple story book. And that gives the child a lot of pleasure, because then all that was, the teacher was reading aloud, but now the child is able to read. The problem sometimes is the books that are available are not very simple or not very interesting. If we have what we said, developmentally appropriate books, simple, interesting books, reading that book and understanding the story is itself a sort of small success for the child, and then the child moves on to the next kind of book. So it's important to be able to provide a structured set of graded books that are simple and interesting, and children can move from one simple level to the next level, to the next level, to the next level, and experience success for themselves.
I see.
And that feeds the child, to be then wanting to read more. Often there are jumps. There's a book which is very simple. After that, there's no book, or there's no interesting book with pictures. So if we can ensure that there's a variety of books which are graded, then children, it feeds on their own success. So that could be one way of.
So it's pretty much up to the adults to acknowledge how the younger generation defines success. Is that pretty much? Anybody want to add anything else?
Yeah, I think this is when the parents' role comes really handy. Parents should tell their kids that, hey, you see that guy on TV, when he was a kid, he read a lot of books. So if you want to be successful like him, you have to read a lot. Like this guy on TV, he can talk about everything. Like for example, Obama, he can talk about everything. Why? Because when he was a kid, he read everything. So like trying to introduce the habit of reading to the kids is really important. So this is the parents' role is very crucial.
Okay. Aya?
I think that in the context of Vietnam, we have different family bookcase that a family have a lot of book that, and they give it to people in the village to come to read the book. And I think that or in other way, we have different projects carried out in Vietnam that provide book for different group of people in rural and remote area. And I think that after the project, they may conduct something like post-project surveys to see what is the difference between the stage before project and after the project. Is there any change? For example, in Vietnam, many women can, thanks to the book that they can read, many women have enough condition to borrow loan from the bank to invest to their farming job or things like that, so they can change their life, and we can make that like an example for people in different area. Yeah.
I see. How about Iminwa?
Well, I have to respond to Ms. Nila saying, if she were my mom and tell me, you see Obama was speaking on TV and he reads a lot when he was young, I will surely answer, how do you know? Are you my mom? Sorry, are you Obama's friend?
No,
Okay.
that's why the parents have to read as well.
Ah,
and then
set
the,
a good
yeah,
example.
the mother can say, yeah, I read his biography.
Well,
The mother should read the biography first before she's able to say that. And then I remember I watched this TED Talks about William Kamkwamba. His name is difficult, from Malawi. This teenager, he was 14. By then, he built a windmill for his family so that his family is able to light up 4 bulbs and a radio. Yeah. So how did he get the idea? From a book that he read. So as a mom, you should tell this type of story to your kids.
All right. Okay. Nice.
and I also want to point out that most of the teenagers, like 14, 15, they are rebellious. Means sometimes they just want to do something different than your parents are saying. That's a very, they want to confront and they want to prove that I am right. So this is what happened to me sometimes when I was young.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to point out is sometimes we sometimes forget that we used to be teenagers when we were 14. I'm right now I'm a teacher. I have chance to meet with 14 years old, 15 years old kids, and I sometimes tell them don't use that. Read a lot. And when I think back, I read, but because we don't have internet at the time. At the issue, maybe I might not read as well. And the point I'm trying to point out is we need to accept all the challenges, and we need to create the environment they want to read. And we need to understand what is the demand and other challenges. Like I point out, internet and social media is a very big challenge that people rather read. I mean, especially teenagers or kids rather read. They rather go to play games or Dota. It's very, I think, addictive, or mega series. So what I'm trying to point out is we need to create the environment they want to read, because as soon as they have choices, they will rather choose reading activity as the last one. And we need to think about how do we promote reading. And I just want to share one experience again. When we visited a library in San Francisco, and they have a reading program called Read to the Dogs. I was surprised. How can dogs understand human? And I was there. I signed up for that. It is dog with a golden retriever, really big, and then children come to meet the dogs. And then children at 3 years old, 2 years old. And all they can talk about is A, B, C, D. And then the parents have to bring, and the parents have to leave from the library, because if there is parent, the kids are not going to read to the dogs. So what I see is there are six dogs in the room. One children go around to the dogs. There is a dog trainer, of course, and then they just read to the dogs like a human. This is a practice they do when they were young. That's how I understand why they become very successful in reading program. As they don't have family member, children don't shy. They keep changing dog to the dog. Sometimes they grab it. Sometimes, golden retriever, children love dogs. Sometimes they lie down with the dogs and read out to them like human. I was so shocked. That's why I'm trying to point out we need to create environment that children want to read.
Right. So with a clear objective and strategy, the tactics may vary depending on the group, the target, the audience, whatsoever. Right. Okay. Now jumping to another issue, which is pretty much the trend, at least in Thailand. All right. Mr. U growing up with speaking Burmese, right? Vietnamese, Bahasa, Hindi, me speaking Thai, but globalization, and especially for our region, this part of the ASEAN community, is pretty much forcing us in a I would say rush way towards the English language, developing English. When do you think it's appropriate to start with content from a second language?
We started to discuss this a little bit yesterday. I think English is the next or already a big divide that's there in our societies. And obviously English is the language of power, English is the language of the economy. So everyone, all parents, all children aspire to learn English. But we must remember that education is all about learning. And learning means thinking, understanding, analyzing, solving problems. And all this is linked to your language. Can we think in the language that we are, that's happening, the discussion is happening in the classroom? Because unless you think, you don't understand, you don't learn. So it's very important if we are to develop as citizens of the 21st century to start learning through a language that we understand very well. Now that's crucial. So this rush that's there in my country also, India, to change the medium of instruction to English or start teaching English from grade 1, it's actually counterproductive. It is producing children who are neither good at their own language nor good at English. So they're what we call semilinguals. They cannot speak or write, read or write any language well. It is very important that children are able to be, get through their thinking, the intellectual development initially through a language that they understand, which is not to deny that it's important to learn the language of power, definitely. But that means that there is a stage for it. There's a time when children are comfortable learning through their own language. The second language or a foreign language can be introduced orally first in a non-threatening environment, not where you have examinations and your performance in English judges your performance at school. So I think children have a great capacity to learn new languages, no doubt about that. But we should not reduce that to a subject that has to start in grade 1 or even before that. Allow the child to learn through a language where the creative processes, the thinking and understanding can happen. And then parallelly, English can be introduced maybe as early as grade 2, 3, but orally. So that there's a lot of, the child is not threatened, the child just is, without effort learning a new language.
Comfortably.
And then not bring about English literacy very soon, not making it a medium of instruction very soon. If it's non-threatening, a child can pick up a language much more quickly and very spontaneously.
Right.
So that's very important.
And would it also mean that if you create a negative experience to a child in the early years, they would not pretty much have, reach out for English content once
Very
they grow
true.
up as well?
And even teachers, I mean, in my country, teachers also are not very good at English. Those teachers who teach in primary schools.
Oh.
So they actually focus on just ABCD or literacy, just forcing children to learn the script, which is not the best way to learn a language.
Right.
So I think it's important, and that, as you were saying, brings out a feeling of inadequacy, and that English learning is not what they're comfortable with, and they'll always avoid then reading in English,
Right.
because their skills remain very limited.
Automatically, a wall
Yeah.
appears. Right. Anybody would like to share anything or maybe some disagreements with that? It's up to you guys. Yeah.
Well, I agree with Dr. D actually. If you don't understand your language, how will you think in another language? If you are not clear yourself, how will you translate into another language? And for sure, English or second language should be learned when they were young in an appropriate way, not in a forceful way. When you visit to Myanmar, if you have a chance, you will see a lot of classes offering and claiming that English language classes, listening, reading, writing, and it is only 2 months. So what I'm trying to point out is if you want to really good in English, you have to learn when you were young, plus you also have to understand your own language as well. I have to agree with that, Dr.
Ladies?
Okay. Maybe I will take myself as an example. I learned English when I was 4 years old. Back then, I couldn't even write. So my dad put me into an English course.
Is that a typical age for every Indonesian or just for you?
No, just for me.
Okay.
Because my dad wanted me to be able to speak English very well, so he put me in a private English course. But at that time, I remember if the teacher says apple and then everybody else wrote apple, I couldn't write at that time. So I was just drawing apple. And it was fine. The teacher didn't mad at me. Yeah, so that's how I learned English. It was fun. I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel that the teacher would punish me. But on the other hand, I also learned Chinese language. The teacher would come to our house. But you know, as a kid, we love to play with our pants or hands. And then the teacher would hit my hand. And then I hated it. I hated it Chinese, and I just didn't want to learn Chinese.
Not because of the subject, but because of the teacher.
Teacher, yes. So now I cannot speak Chinese.
Okay.
So when my dad one day told me that, hey Nila, your Chinese language teacher got a tuberculosis, so now there's no more Chinese language course. And then I remember I was jumping on bed, yeah, no more Chinese lesson.
Okay.
But now I regret.
Okay.
Yeah. So making it a fun way to learn, I think is very important. So maybe in the classrooms, if we have to learn a foreign language, the teacher should do it in a fun way. Don't force kids to do what you want.
Right.
Just let them play, let them draw, let them let them use their own creativity in learning a foreign language.
This includes the atmosphere in libraries
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Right. Okay, Ms. Hai-ha?
In Vietnam, things has changed a lot. For example, with my older son, he's 11 years old now. He started studying English at grade 3 when he's really master Vietnamese. But with my little kid, he's 6 years old, going to be 6 years old now, and he's still in the kindergarten. And they start teaching him English in the kindergarten, but in a very funny way. They know how to sing some English song, or they know some very simple words like apple, orange, things like that. And I think that the people will be much easier to learn a new language besides the mother language if they are put in a very friendly environment, when people encourage them to speak the other language, and they have no stress from the exam, no stress from the strict of the teacher, things like that. So it will be much easier for them.
Okay. Now, this is the last 6 minutes for us. So before coming back to my last question, I'd like to ask the audience if anybody would like to ask a question, whether it's an open question for all or for any specific question for anybody on the panel. Anybody, please? Okay, I see one hand here. Anybody else? I just want to see so I could line you guys up. Okay, just one in a moment. If you would introduce yourself and the question, please.
Yes, my name is Thana Intara Pintuvat. I'm a retired librarian, Thailand. And thanks very much for your very relaxing atmosphere lecture today. I just would like to share some of the image that you have about the students. I mean, overall, as a librarian, I think it's not nothing wrong with the student if they spend maybe a few minutes or half an hour sleeping, you know, because sometimes they just come up from maybe after lunch, maybe from the very hard play outside. But let's make sure that it's only a small percentage of students. But most percentage that I've seen with my own experiences, they come for the study, the research. And it's nothing wrong because the university or any, schools or no matter what level, we spend a lot of money on building the facilities or the libraries, to be as ideal as possible. So we should just encourage them to come and welcome them, no matter in what form. And no matter in what, user behavior Sometimes you might think it's not proper, but as long as they are with you, you must be happy with them. It's just better than just leaving them outside, going outside, which is full of business traps. I mean, nowadays. So, as a mother as well, and as a senior citizen here, I just would like us to be, let's say, to be kind to them. Don't think that only a small sleep, a small time sleep is something serious. No, we should accept them. And it's better than just have the librarian sleeping, and let the student wake them up. That's the opposite thing, So even the teacher, we are not a superwoman, a superman without sleeping or falling asleep. Even during the lecture, sometimes I hear sometimes fall asleep. So it's nothing wrong with human behavior here. So please be kind to them and do the best to facilitate them. Welcome them, attract them to our libraries. That's the best thing to do. And especially this group of small percentage should be used with the strategy. We just listened to the afternoon session before this one. That is a strategy that we should apply with them, right? So let's make sure that our librarians, we don't distract them. We just try our best to lure them to our libraries.
Right.
And another thing is about the language that you mentioned. I think that's a tablet, would be helpful, because sometimes the pronunciation, especially for Thai students, little children, just compare with my age. When I study at university or at school, I have to carry a lot of dictionaries with me. There is no talking dick like today. So I think the facilities here that Thai students have, or no matter where in the world now, they are lucky to have that kind of media to help them. So nothing wrong with the tablet if we use or we just direct them into the right way and assign them the right lessons. So that would be helpful for language pronunciation. All right. Thank you very much for your comments and listening to me. Thank you.
Okay. We go to the next gentleman there.
Yes, I would like to stress upon equity and equality is much different. Equality means you half and half, but equity means the one who get less should get more. And I would like to suggest that to encourage more reading, I think the role and responsibility of the librarian is very great and very important. But first, we have to get inspiration for all the people who get involved with the reading. That means we are going to do this for next life. For our next life, if we do good for this life, our next life will be good. So if we have inspiration on that, this is the strategy to do the more reading. First, we need the customer need analysis, like our friend from Myanmar says. We have to know that our future reader, what do they need? They are farmer, they are student, they are teacher. Second, we need to have the reader forum. We have to invite, so the library should be the forum for people who need the knowledge in the local community, and listen to them. What do they need? And we are made to order. So we have the different corner, book for farmer, book for entrepreneur, book for entrance, something like that. And the next one is honor to the donor. We should have something for fundraising. That means people in every community like to donate, but their donation should be honored. You can have the picture, you can have the name, okay? Like in the hospital, we have the donor of the room for that. And we also, if we are lacking of the book, we can also have the book lending from the private collection once in a while. And we also need the volunteer spirit. And we also have the fun that many people talk about. And the last one, I think, we need to go to travel to the place we like to know. So if we are talking about encouraging ASEAN spirit, if we just read the book about Vietnam, Laos, and when we sitting in Bangkok, how we can get inspired and how can understand. We have a Chinese saying said, if you read 100 and 1,000 books, it's not better than if you travel 100,000 kilometers, it's much better than reading 100,000 books. So we should arrange traveling to visit our neighbor in a cheaper and easier way. That means some publisher may forget some, in English language, we have the Lonely Planet book. You have the, on cost, on guest house of different price. But so we also need that kind of thing. So if we like to go to Hanoi, to Vietnam, we should have the book in Thailand here. Tell that if you want to have a 250 baht a night, where the hotel, 500 baht a night, and also the guidebook to visit in the language. So by this way, visiting is connectivity. Thank you.
Yes, okay, thank you. And we're pretty much, we're out of time now. So maybe back to the speakers. Anybody would like to comment, add anything on that, or jump to the last question? Last question? Okay. It's pretty much, as you are from different countries, how would you see the way of the countries within this region, Southeast Asia, maybe ASEAN +6, including India as well? How can we collaborate between each country to make sure that we can help each other's people in terms of having equal access to books and to reading? And further to that, when can we know if we have succeeded or achieved social equality in terms of reading? When do we know that we've made it? Or maybe there's no finish line, I don't know.
Yeah, it is a very broad question, and I see a lot of possibility as well. But get to the point, it's you need to, well, basically it is the common problems or common challenging that we are facing right now. As I said, right now in Thailand, we hear about India, Indonesia, Vietnam, same problems. So what we have to do is we have to, what I say, we have to accept the challenge, and we have to find more ways, and we need to discuss possible solution to each other, and then apply it. Although we are living in the different country, different region, and the problem it's almost the same. So that's what I think. A forum or reading conference like this will work. And then we need to discuss, or maybe right now social media is very strong, as I said. Maybe we can discuss on that, and what is our, what is Myanmar way of solving the problem, or what is Vietnamese way, or all those things. We can apply knowledge to each other. Yeah.
Thank you.
I also agree with him that we need the conference like this so that we can come to see and hear the experience from other countries, and otherwise we can use social media, like we keep contact on Facebook or Twitter or things like that, so that people can get connected in some virtual way, and people can learn from each other and can share from each other.
Yeah, same thing. Conferences like this so that we can all share experiences. But maybe another idea would be to have conference like this and then have it live stream in all countries in Southeast Asia and also plus India, so that people from all these countries can watch and then can also ask questions. That will be perfect. We should maximize the use of technology, right?
Yeah, of course. Dr. D? Pretty much all that. Okay. So it's pretty much a tough path ahead, but it's something inevitably we have to walk there. And so in order to create equality and equity, what do you call it, it may have to be tailored. It may have to be done in a holistic approach with the government and the private sectors doing their part. However, it's pretty much for the sake of ourselves, as this is to create a better younger generation, as they will soon become the adults, and we the ones taking care of us once we reach the age of retirement. So I believe this is a very useful stage here. So please a round of applause for our 4 speakers on stage. ครับก็ขอบคุณนะครับ